Tonight, Qnews brings you the special coverage as tensions escalate across the Middle East and Europe. In Doha, Qatar prepares to host an emergency Arab Islamic summit after Israel's strike on its territory, a move condemned across the region as an attack on sovereignty. Meanwhile, NATO faces its own test after Poland shot down Russian drones over its airspace. Allies accuse Moscow of violating international law, but Russia denies the responsibility. Qatar has confirmed that it will host an emergency Arab Islamic summit on Monday, following Israel's strike on its territory. Foreign Ministry spokesman Majid Al-Ansari said that the summit will discuss a resolution condemning what he called Israel's cowardly aggression. He added that the timing reflects broad Arab and Islamic solidarity with Doha and rejection of Israel's state terrorism. Foreign ministers of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Pakistan have stressed that Arab and Islamic unity ahead of Monday's emergency summit in Doha. In phone talks, the ministers called for continued coordination in politics, diplomacy and economics to safeguard regional security. They said that solidarity is vital at this critical moment as the region faces escalating tensions. Protesters in Jordan have rallied in solidarity with Gaza and against Israel's strike on Qatar that killed senior Hamas figures. Crowds gathered in central Amman condemning what they called Israeli aggression after the strike in Doha earlier this week. Israel said that it was targeting Hamas leadership, killing Hammam al-Hayya, the son of Gaza's exiled chief Khalil al-Hayya, along with 4 Hamas security members. Washington described the attack as a unilateral move that does not serve U.S. or Israeli interests. Libya's Parliamentary Friendship Committee with Qatar has condemned what it called a treacherous Israeli attack on Doha. In a statement carried by House spokesperson Abdullah Bilhaq, the Libyan Qatari Parliamentary Friendship Committee expressed full solidarity with Qatar and extended condolences to the families of the victims. It also urged the UN Security Council to take responsibility, protect civilians, and safeguard Qatar's sovereignty following the strike. For further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Al Ahram managing editor, Mr. Mohammed Izzeddin. Welcome to Qnews, sir. Now, how significant is the emergency Arab Islamic summit in Doha for shaping a collective response to Israel's strike on Qatar?
Thanks for having me in Qnews. Absolutely. It is a very significant gathering, and I think that will put the dot on the letter. So with respect to the unjustified and reckless attacks of the Israeli occupation, even on countries that are constitute a mediation and pursue in paving a path in the Middle East. In addition, it is a gross violation of the sovereignty of a very important state in the region that pursue the Arab Islamic gathering can have a methodology in addressing with Israel in the future, particularly the genocidal war launched on the Gaza Strip and the Palestinian seems that is indefinite, but attempts to liquidate the Palestinian cause. And I think that the Arab bloc and gathering isn't just sending a message to Israel, but to the United States and the whole world, as such aggressions aren't accepted and should be stopped.
Mhm. So, what practical resolutions or measures could realistically emerge from the summit, in your own opinion, and how enforceable might they be?
Absolutely, there are measures through which that could halt such excesses or the Israeli attacks. Firstly, for the United States to intervene. The United States is funding Israel by arms. Previously, before the glorious October's war, following the defeat of Israel, there was some sort of an international embargo. I think the Arab Islamic Summit to be held in Qatar should send a message to the whole world to stop funding Israel of killing defenseless and civilian children, as Israel only respects the power and the economic casualties. And if we cut the fundraising of Israel, that will deter Israel and diminish its aggressions, and also to collaborate with the European Union that wishes to deter Israel through economic sanctions, halting the trade exchange and importation from Israel, to have some sort of an impact of the Israeli economy that is deteriorated due to the war launched by the extremist far right, not just the Israeli government, but it is an extremist coalition to pursue to re-implement or implement new maps in order to expand its influence or the stealing new territories, in addition to hindering the path of the two-state solution, along with the establishment of the Palestinian statehood.
Mhm. And how does the involvement of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan actually signal broader Arab Islamic alignment in confronting Israeli actions and aggressions?
Such a gathering and a message sent by the Arab countries, on top of which is Egypt. These countries are the very pivotal regional states in the region and the world, and sending a message of the necessity of halting the Israeli aggressions and to start immediately to have a ceasefire or none to storming more territories. The Palestinian people has become now that has no place in Gaza to live on, and the lack of safety, even in territories proclaimed by the Israeli occupation that they are safe, the women, children, defenseless civilians are getting killed pursuing humanitarian aid. The matter is very much relating to the goodwill and these four big countries, on top of which Egypt centrally, that may have a voice to be raised to the whole world and sending a message to the occupation state to the necessity of halting such actions that de-escalate the area and triggering more further tensions, and the The two-state solution is the sole solution, which is peace and not the military operation or the stealing territories.
And to what extent could U.S. engagement with Qatar, including President Donald Trump's talks with Doha's leadership, influence the summit's tone and outcomes and results?
I think that such a meeting was very necessary, and American explanations of the Israeli attacks and the sense that the U.S. is feeling that will help so in a way or another to deter Israel, in addition to provide guarantees. I cannot be a state of servants or the friendly country that has a military, U.S. military base and getting attacked by Israel, which is unacceptable and shouldn't be repeated in the future with either in Qatar or in the other countries that pursue peace through the cessation of the fire and more of flooding the area with humanitarian aids. And I think the Americans vows that would put an obstacle before the path of Israel not to repeat such actions in the area after embarrassing the current U.S. administration.
How might Israel's targeting of senior Hamas figures in Qatar affect the balance between counter-terrorism claims and violations of state sovereignty?
Absolutely, this matter is very odd and alarming. For the states that pursue peace, and one of the mediators is Qatar, and getting attacked. That means that there is a flaw in the international and regional system, and of course the United States has a role in such that by getting a very tangible guarantees from Israel not to repeat such actions. Otherwise, the region will be triggered if the response of Israeli aggression could be put in place, and not the de-escalation that will impact the economy, trade, oil prices, along with the currencies. It is a very important point or area, either because of the oil or the positioning of American foreign military bases, or in big countries such as Egypt, Turkey, Pakistan. These countries have a weight in the world power. Such security system shouldn't be imposed by threats by Israel or any other power in the region.
So what risks does this escalation pose for regional stability, particularly with rising protests in Jordan we have seen, and mounting public anger across the Arab world?
Absolutely, the Palestinian cause is the first and sole Arab cause. Following the latest Israeli actions, and the case or the cause has been transferred to the First World cause due to the horrible aggressions against the defenseless Palestinian people that are going on daily basis, along with the starvation war, in addition of using weapons against the defenseless civilians, and also the non-abiding of countries to the international law. Such Israeli violations of the international law have become and posing a great risk upon the regional stability and the international stability. Such a reckless deed should be deterred and to start a trajectory of peace and cessation of the military operation that do not target the release of the captives but more controlling of territories along with the settlements. In addition, in a very dire attempt to halt the international recognition of the establishment of the Palestinian state.
Okay. And how effective is international condemnation from Libya's parliament actually to the UN Security Council in deterring further Israeli strikes on foreign soil?
Absolutely. Following the Israeli attacks in Qatar, that is uncalculated in Doha, there is a sense of the necessity to challenge any future aggression upon any state in the region. The whole country or the region has a sense of instability regionally, and the United States should effectively to intervene, launching any new war or any exchanged aggression between the occupying forces and the Middle East region isn't going to have any good for any country but more bloodshed and the imbalance in the region, particularly if the occupation state to be involved in any other aggression or against any neighboring countries.
Well, that was Mr. Mohammed Izzeddin from Cairo. He is Al Ahram managing editor. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here on Qnews. And now we move on to Russia and Ukraine conflict. The United States has vowed to defend NATO after a suspected Russian drone incursion into Poland triggered the alliance's first defensive action since the Ukraine war began. At the UN Security Council, acting U.S. envoy Dorothy Shea said that Washington stands by its allies against what she called alarming violations of NATO airspace. Her remarks came after President Donald Trump suggested the incursion may have been a mistake. Poland rejected that, showing photos of downed drones with Russian markings. Russia denied targeting Poland, insisting that its drones could not have reached that far. A joint statement backed by 43 nations accused Moscow of violating international law. China has urged calm and restraint after drones from the Ukraine war breached Polish airspace, triggering a NATO air defense response. At an emergency UN Security Council meeting, China's deputy envoy Zhang Chuang called on all parties to resolve disputes peacefully and avoid escalation. Poland said that 19 drone objects crossed its skies on Wednesday, with F-16s and Dutch F-35s intercepting several. Zhang described the incident as a spillover of the Ukraine crisis, stressing the need for dialogue, goodwill, and renewed momentum for peace talks. The United States and its allies have condemned Russia over a drone incursion into Poland, accusing Moscow of violating international law. In a joint statement read before the UN Security Council, Poland's Secretary of State, Marcin Bosacki, urged Russia to halt its war in Ukraine and avoid further provocations. The statement was backed by Washington and 42 other countries. President Donald Trump said earlier that the drone incident could have been a mistake, but allies insist that it marks a serious breach of NATO airspace. Poland's foreign minister said that Russian drones violating its airspace are part of a pattern, urging allies to show Moscow there are limits. Rodolfo Sikorski told reporters in Kiev that NATO must collectively stop what he called Russia's hybrid war. Poland and allied jets shot down drones on Wednesday in the alliance's first defensive action of the Ukraine war. Russia denied deliberately targeting Poland, but Sikorski rejected U.S. President Donald Trump's suggestion that it may have been a mistake, saying that a 7-hour air battle cannot be explained away. Ukraine has offered to share its drone defense expertise, with talks set for September 18.
Suggestion that this was premeditated. And they did damage to property. Fortunately, nobody was killed. But it was also accompanied with immediate, huge disinformation.
And for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by the Associate Professor of the Institute of International Relations and World History at Lobachevsky University, Dr. Amr Deeb. Welcome to Qnews. Dr. Amr, now, how serious is the Russian drone incursion into Poland in terms of NATO's collective security obligations under Article 5?
Greetings to you. With respect to what took place previously of Russian drones incursion into the Polish airspace, a matter that triggered Poland to consolidate, or through which to give the right for its partners for consultation to move forward in the next phase of the implementation of the Article 5 of the NATO Charter. This issue is a great escalation, and if it isn't going to be stopped, that would trigger a direct confrontation between Russia side and the Western side, such as Poland, that has a great aggression to the Russian side from the Western side that supports strongly the Ukrainian side in its war with Russia.
Mm-hmm. And what does NATO's first defensive action since the Ukraine war began reveal about the alliance's readiness and red lines?
NATO is for long is prepared for any escalation on the Eastern Front. There are several maneuvers that are taking place on a monthly basis in the eastern countries of the NATO. The NATO, particularly the Western side, is strongly and fully prepared for any escalation. And what happened of the incursion or the breach of the Polish airspace by the drones is an evidence of the NATO that is fully prepared and vested to any matter that could happen, or on the level of the Russian-Western confrontation. Such a matter we see in several statements by the Eastern Europe countries, on top of which Poland, and certainly we could notice on the size and the amount of the European maneuvers in the eastern area with Russia in preparing of any escalation by Russia or even from the NATO countries, if the matter were developed either in Ukraine or in particularly with Poland.
Mm-hmm. And how credible is Moscow's denial that its drones targeted Poland, given Warsaw's evidence of Russian markings?
For Russia and what took place of the airspace breach could be accidental, particularly with the lack of control electronically of such drones. And this could be happened as an accident. In the meantime, that could be a Russian trial over the air defense system, particularly for the NATO, and the possibility of the air defense breaches for the NATO. Away of these two assumptions, the matters aren't for the interest of anyone, particularly US and Russia. Poland wishes for the escalation that has an historic hostility with Russia and Ukraine in particular. So, any confrontation that could happen due to such a breach of drone, not in the interest of Russia nor the United States or the biggest countries in the NATO, on top of which Britain, France and Germany. But with respect to the reality of the airspace breach of Poland in itself is a great risk, and even for Russia it's going to be very dangerous if it is not done deliberately. It's a message that Russia should be fully alert and to use all its capabilities of not repeated the incident, as that would lead to direct confrontation between Russia and the NATO. We're talking here about Poland as a member state of NATO, and if engage directly with other countries, the NATO should be intervene according to the Article 5 of the NATO Charter.
And what impact could President Trump's remark that the incursion may have been a mistake actually have on alliance cohesion and deterrence?
Trump's remark ultimately will be forced as the United States is the most important state in the NATO that could be forced to engage with other countries in the NATO if they decided something. Therefore, Trump has his own perspective with regard to the system of work within the NATO and with respect to his ties with Russia. But ultimately, he has to abide to what's happening within the NATO, and for the countries, if they decided something, then even Trump mentioned it frankly, and even on the level of the economic sanctions for the NATO to decide the size of sanctions, and we at the United States will endorse such sanctions.
So, well, I get your point, sir. I'd like to thank you so much, Dr. Amr Eldib from Cairo, the Associate Professor of the Institute of International Relations and World History at Lobachevsky University. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Q News. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes tonight's special coverage. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Qnews EG to always stay informed. My name is Hala Al-Hamalawi. Thank you so much for watching.